Welcome to The Long Leash. I'm James Jacobson. Now, I'm sure we all know how impactful a dog can be to a family. In the case of today's guest, Donna Dees, her dog Daisy served as a rock for her children and provided the support and comfort that they needed when she was going through a divorce. But Donna didn't realize at the time what an impact Daisy would have on all of their lives. Donna Dees, thank you for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
It's so hard to figure out exactly where to begin because, as we were chatting before we started recording, you've done so many different things, but it seems that dogs have been this recurrent part of your life that have been there for you, and it appears to me shaped some of your responses and who you are. Is that fair?
I think that is fair. I think you take all of life's experiences and not really sure how they connect until that moment when they actually do connect. And that's, I know we want to keep this, a little bit more dog focused, but when I organized the Million Mom March, it was all of my experiences came together in one moment to create something that was pretty spectacular, something I had never done before, but because I had all these other life experiences, they just all converged with one moment. So
don't you think that life is that way? It's like one thing leads to another, and only from the perspective of looking back do you see where everything is congruent and just like, oh, well, that's a logical thing. Of course I would go from there to there.
absolutely. I ended up having to write a book about how I organized the Million Mom March. But but people are like, how could you have done this? Because there was no social media in 1999 when I launched it. And I mean, we barely had email. But what I did have were these life experiences. I had worked on Capitol Hill, and it's very sad to talk about the Capitol Hill police because they've had so much tragedy as of late. But I knew how to call the Capitol Hill police
Including
and say,
including this morning when we're recording this, yeah.
Yes, I know. You didn't want to date it, but it's there were a lot of trouble. But I knew how to call them 202-224-3121. That is always the number for Capitol Hill.
Right.
And I had worked on the Hill right out of college for a U.S. Senator, so I knew how
Who did you work for?
I worked for U.S. Senator Russell Long.
Okay.
And that was like almost like I got a PhD in politics just for working for him for 4 years. I learned everything that,
Especially
possibly.
Senator Long, yeah.
Yes. At the time, when he was elected, when I worked for him, he was ready to retire. But when he was elected, he was the youngest person elected at the age of 29. He had to wait until he turned 30 to take it. And his father, Huey Long, had been assassinated. So he had come from a political family. He'd known tragedy, knew Capitol Hill. So it was that experience of just knowing how to navigate Capitol Hill and to get a permit. But it was also how to talk in sound bites. I sort of learned that from Senator Long too, how to talk in little pithy sound bites. I probably will never do it for this podcast.
Well, this is why it's called The Long Leash. We get to go on these tangents.
Okay, good. And then I knew how to write a press release. And if a well-written press release, in fact, I didn't even write the best press release for the Million Mile March. I had a friend call a friend and I said, I need a press release that uses every mommy metaphor you possibly can. And then I looked at the calendar, like when should I do this? And being a PR person, you're always looking for hooks. And I thought, ooh, Mother's Day. And then when I counted the months to when I got, enraged about gun violence in this country, it was actually 9 months to the day I applied for the permit to the day we marched on Washington. And the 9-month metaphor just, we just beat that one to death, quite frankly. So how much can you create in 9 months? Well, we created a march of close to 1 million people. So
obviously, it's because it has been more than 20 years. Describe how significant the Million Mom March was and what you were hoping to accomplish with that.
Well, at the time, it was August 10th, 1999. I worked for late David Letterman. I had the best job in the business. I publicized stupid pet tricks, stupid human tricks, top 10 lists.
So what was it like working for Letterman? What were some of the favorite, stupid pet tricks that you saw?
I tried to remember some of them for you, but I think the ones I remember once was the dog that jumped rope, double Dutch rope was one of my favorites. And there was the beagle that played dead, that went completely limp. Yes, the stupid pet tricks. Talk about a good job that all you do is you write press releases about stupid pet tricks and stupid human tricks and top 10 lists. But
I get paid for this?
I
Yeah.
get exactly. And it was like, and we were I had a job share, a mommy job share. And so David Letterman signed off to the CBS brass that two mothers could share a job so that we could spend time with our kids. And I don't know if CBS has done it since, but I know we were the first. We were trailblazers at CBS, and David Letterman was the one that got that going. So I always have nothing but fond memories of working for Late Show with David Letterman, just for that very fact that I had a job share.
Yeah, that does sound like a pretty good job. Let's loop it back, however, towards the Million Mom March. How did that get started?
So I guess I wasn't really thinking about how can I absolutely ruin this idyllic life that I have by going to take on the gun lobby.
Mm-hmm.
But I did. There was a shooting at a Jewish community center in Los Angeles, in Granada Hills. And fortunately, none of the children died. But a gunman came in. It was a white supremacist who never should have had access to a gun. He managed to go through several loopholes in order to acquire his arsenal. And Late Show was happened to be on a dark week. It was vacation week. So I was so enraged. I decided I want to volunteer for the gun violence prevention movement. And it's not easy to volunteer.
Really?
For a nonprofit. And it really isn't. And some of them are easier than others. I guess the American Red Cross, they're ones you can call up and they can put you to work right away. But in gun violence prevention, they get so many death threats and hostile calls and craziness that it's very hard just to pick up the phone and get somebody on the phone. And I didn't know that at the time. I didn't know why it was so hard to.
Because you're working for Letterman, you're used to being able to pick up the phone and get anyone.
And people returned my calls. That was what's crazy.
Yeah.
I know. I was like, wait a minute. I'm calling people. I'm trying to volunteer for something. So I thought, you were asking me how significant it was. That was significant right there, that people did not have an easy way to enter the gun violence prevention movement. And so it took me about a week to figure out what to do. And I came up with a one-page PR plan to figure out how to build a grassroots movement for the gun violence prevention arena. I mean, all you ever heard at that time was the gun lobby was so powerful. There were so many people that belonged to the National Rifle Association, so many members, and there really wasn't a counterbalance. And so this was, in recent history, like in the last 20, 30 years, the first real grassroots movement that was a counterbalance to the gun lobby and what they had.
Okay. So this is, of course, the long leash. So we got to talk about dogs. And I know that during this odyssey, you had a dog by your side named Daisy, right?
No, we got Daisy after.
But
okay. She came along the right time. Right in the middle of me organizing the Million Mom March, my husband asked me for a divorce, which
in the middle of putting this together. Okay.
Yes. And he's a great divorce dad. I just want to say right out the front. And timing was not the best. Right after the Million Mom March, when we had to tell our daughters, who I guess were 5 and 6 at the time, 5 and 6, Mommy and Daddy are getting a divorce. And we're going to get a dog. And I thought that was that would be like, I ignore the first part of my sentence, but we're just focusing on the dog. Other than that, Mrs. Lincoln, how was the play? Exactly. So Daisy was a result of trying to soften the blow of a failed marriage and the family sort of breaking apart. And Daisy was just the perfect dog, the perfect divorce dog. And sometimes I used to call her that.
Is that a thing? The divorce
it
dog?
should be a thing.
Okay.
It should be a thing. And we should do that, Jim. We should write a book about Daisy the divorce dog. It should be, because she was just the perfect pup for that experience. And somebody would call her Daisy the divorce dog in her presence, and she would look at me like, please don't label me with that.
Let's talk about that. Was she good for your daughters? Was she good for you? Was she good for your ex?
She was good for all of us. She was also good for the divorce lawyers, because a lot of time went into arguing over the vet bills. Who's going to pay the vet bills?
For real.
And I do have to say, it was crazy arguments to be had because my ex-husband's a very generous person and he did take care of the vet bills. And I say that now because in our divorce agreement, the financial agreement, that Daddy agrees to pay for Daisy's vet bills, and it's very sweet.
Literally, it's like the lawyers have refined the legal language to Daddy agrees to pay the vet bills for
They
Daisy.
were actually fighting over those words,
I love it.
and it was my lawyer who wanted those words, Daddy,
Uh-huh.
Daisy's vet bills. And then we walked out of that negotiation. He says, "Now all future pets must be named Daisy. You have a horse that needs a heart transplant, Daddy. A turtle that needs a
Yeah.
lung transplant."
Well, now
Daddy pays.
Daddy was defined, but Daisy wasn't in the legal
Yeah,
terms.
but I do have to say, and again, I say this with all sincerity, Daisy had very good vet care for her 14 years.
So,
Yeah.
okay, so what kind of dog was Daisy?
Daisy was a Wheaten Terrier, soft-coated Wheaten Terrier.
Okay, so Daisy,
Yeah.
so you have this conversation with your very young children.
Yes.
You say, we're getting a divorce, but we're also getting a dog. What was their reaction?
Well, Lily, my oldest daughter, was a real animal lover. And so she immediately started, let's get some books and see what kind of dog we want. And she came up that she wanted like some kind of a lab mix and a rescue. And that's all good. I mean, sometimes I have to say, we went to go for a rescue dog first. And while I was literally in my mom minivan in New Jersey, driving to go pick up a dog that kind of met, Lily's expectations,
Right.
I got a call from my stepson who had a Wheaten Terrier named Lucas. Lucas was the best dog ever, too. And Lucas had some terrier issues, some dog issues. And David, my stepson, said, "Look, you can't get a lab because Lucas does not get along with labs. And if you get a lab, we're not going to be able to come stay with you on Fire Island, and the dogs will fight and it'll be a terrible situation." And I always, for many years later, I would call Dave and thank you for, extorting me for, because I said, okay, I remember pulling the minivan over. I'm like, okay, I'm like in like a gas station. I'm like, what do I need to get? Because now they're expecting a dog.
Right.
And he said, well, Lucas gets along with female soft-coated Wheaten Terriers. So I said, find me one like in a half an hour. And sure enough, he called, the breeder that they had gotten Lucas from, and I went and picked up Daisy.
In what way did the children build a relationship with Daisy that helped them overcome the trauma that obviously kids feel during a divorce?
I had to call Lily. I was at the place where David, my stepson, sent me to get the Wheaten Terrier. And there were several Wheaten Terriers and puppies. And I called Lily's school and I said, this is an emergency. I know we're not supposed to call, but I need to talk to Lily. And she was in first grade. And they put her through. And I said, Lily, I'm so sorry to bother you in class, but David felt like, the lab rescue wasn't going to be a good fit for Lucas. And I'm looking at Wheaten Terriers. How do you feel about that? She says, I just want a dog. I don't care.
She doesn't care. She's in first grade.
Just give me a dog.
Right.
And then I said, okay, now there's 2 dogs I have to decide between here. One is so cute and fluffy and just as sweet as she can be, jumping all on my lap. And I said, there's another one who her eyes are a little too close together. She's a bit of the runt. And she's kind of shaking and she's not too friendly. And Lily says, get that one, Mom. That's the one I want. And of course, the dog breeder said, that once you get that dog home, you're going to see a different dog. But that's the one Lily said, let's get, because Phoebe's not, a little afraid of dogs. So they might be a good match for each other. And they were. Phoebe when I brought Daisy home, Phoebe would sit up on the sofa high up so Daisy couldn't nip at her feet. And then Daisy would start suddenly very gradually would warm up to Phoebe, and they became like best buddies forever. So, and then the dog ultimately turned out to be the dog Phoebe wanted, but I digress.
So how old was Phoebe and Lily at this time?
5 and 6.
Okay. So they're very close. They're very close in age.
Yes.
But Lily was able to look after her little sister Phoebe such a way that she knew that this runt of the litter. I mean, I think that's kind of brave, and you're giving an awful lot of credit telephonically pull your kid out of school or pull your kid out of class, get them on the phone to say, do you want the cute bouncy dog or the run of the litter? And she says, and she's able to deliberate. You're giving a lot of power to a 6-year-old.
Well, it was a difficult time for her. So the fact that she was able to process the information and made the right decision, because that was the right dog for us. Although they keep saying any dog we'd have gotten, that brown lab rescue would have probably been all the same. I'm like, I don't believe that. I think the universe gives you the dog that you need at that particular moment.
So I want to go back to that conversation, because I just want to, if you could help describe the visuals around the conversation of you, your ex, your 2 daughters saying, we're getting a divorce, but we're also getting a dog. Like, set the stage.
It's a very sad moment. I think anybody who's been through a divorce with small children or even older children, it's a very sad thing. You have to kind of keep yourself together. And I remember we were in the living room and we sat the girls down, and I don't even know if they understood what divorce was. I mean, I think, probably Lily did. She watched a lot of television with me sometimes and asked questions, and she probably had some friends. But, other than that, I think I was very sad about, saying that Daddy was moving out. That's a very hard conversation. Daddy is leaving. But I do have to say, since my ex-husband had been through it before, he had 3 boys from his first marriage. He had a place already set up for the girls. And so we said, let's go see where you're going to be living. And whoever has the kids has the dog. And
the dog goes with you girls, wherever.
It goes with the kids.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And the fact that I had originally thought we were going to get a rescue, I didn't, that a dog that was already going to be house trained. But I have to say, it's very enlightening to see how confusing it is for kids to go back and forth from one house to another house in a divorce, because do they have the right books? Do they have the right shoes? Do they have their things?
Right.
It's a very complicated time for kids. And I didn't really appreciate it until Daisy had a very hard time being house trained. For one of the smartest dogs ever, she was very confused about the whole process. And I think it was because of going back and forth and back and forth. And we're very lucky that we also had a beach house on Fire Island. And for some reason, that's where Daisy figured it out, because that was the place, kind of like having the dog. It was the neutral place. In New Orleans, we call them the neutral ground, the median strips, the neutral grounds, where I guess it has something to do with the War of 1812 or whatever, the Spanish. I have no idea. I forget my New Orleans history, but it's the area, it's the neutral ground. Like that Fire Island house was the neutral ground. And so Daisy kind of got it, figured it all out there. And that's also where Daisy sort of developed her lifeguard skills.
What do you mean lifeguard skills?
Well, she got, soft-coated wheat interiors, a bit of herding dogs. I guess maybe in Ireland, wherever, somebody's going to probably call in and correct you on, not me, of course, on this and that, what was the breed for, but they herded goats or sheep or something. So Daisy became a herding dog, in that she herded, the kids would jump in the pool, and then she would run around the pool, trying to get them out of the pool and making sure they were okay. Yeah. And she would be barking constantly until she finally figured out that the pool was a fun thing. And then Daisy started to jump in the pool with the girls. And then it became always Daisy's pool and throwing the ball in the pool and whatnot. Daisy became such a strong swimmer. I mean, we would take her to the beach and throw the ball in the ocean or whatever, and she would sometimes go way out. And we're like, oh my gosh, we're never gonna see our dog again. And then she would come swimming back with that ball. And it was the year of 2005, and my girls were away at sleepaway camp. And it was kind of a rough weather day, and we're walking along the beach, and there was a golden retriever in the water struggling to get to shore. And you're in Hawaii, I believe, right? So you understand riptides. So it was clearly the dog. And I don't think Fire Island had a lot of riptides, but I know, there have been occasions where you could feel the undertow. And the owners were like complete idiots. I'm sorry, but they were throwing toys in, thinking the dog was not trying to come back in. And I'm like, no, I think your dog is caught in a riptide.
Right.
And they're ignoring me. And then Daisy starts barking like crazy. and she literally jumps into the ocean and she swims and leads the dog swimming parallel to the beach and gets the golden retriever.
Wow. So Daisy really is a lifeguard. I get
She's
it.
a lifeguard. But so, yes, because I tell the story to everybody, and my kids still don't believe the story. They were at sleepaway camp. I wrote them a letter. Daisy saved. They're like, Mom, that really didn't happen. I'm like, yes, it did. And this was before iPhone cameras and stuff. And I think if I had only had a video of my dog swimming parallel to the beach and getting and saving the life of that golden retriever. So thank you, Jim, for letting me tell the story of Daisy saving the day.
On that heroic note, let's take a break so that we can keep the lights on here at Dog Podcast Network and hear from some of our sponsors. We will be right back. Hi, it's me again, James Jacobson, and there are 3 things that you should know about me. 1, since 2003, I have been driven by an all-consuming mission. That mission is to help improve the quality of life for dogs and the people who love them. 2, I have founded or helped to co-found several companies that share that mission, including Dog Podcast Network. And 3, every day I give my dogs EverPup, the ultimate daily dog supplement made by Functional Nutriments, which is one of those companies. What is EverPup? EverPup is an extraordinary all-in-one supplement that you sprinkle on your dog's food. It's a polyceutical, which means it contains an incredible blend of lots of different human-grade ingredients. It contains vitamins and minerals and prebiotics and probiotics and enzymes and dietary adaptogens and so much more. What you need to know is that it supports every cell and system in your dog's body. And EverPup is appropriate no matter what type of diet you feed your dog, from kibble to raw food to home cooked. And the rich green powder is easy to add to food. Dogs love the taste. They find it delicious. And you can even try it yourself because EverPup is made with 100% human-grade ingredients. It's made here in the USA in an FDA-registered and inspected laboratory. And all the ingredients are ethically sourced and triple-checked for quality. Seeing is believing, so try EverPup for a month and see what happens with your dog. EverPup is available through select veterinarians and pet shops and Amazon, but here is the best way to try EverPup. Join the EverPup Club and get free shipping to any U.S. address. As a listener to this podcast, you can get your first shipment of EverPup for just $8, including free shipping, when you use the discount code DOGEDITION. For all the details, go to everpupclub.com and try your first full jar of EverPup for just $8. That's everpupclub.com. And we are back with Donna Dees. Now, I know that obviously Daisy was there at a pivotal time during the divorce for everyone, but as Daisy got a little bit older, towards the end of her life, you went on a journey of sorts.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
Yes. Well, Daisy, and talk about, you said something earlier about when life happens, you look back and you wonder, well, that was supposed to
Everything
be.
is congruent. It's like, it
Yes.
all makes sense now.
It all makes sense. I had a long career with CBS. But I kept leaving. I would do a job. I'd work for Dan Rather for a couple of years. Then I got married and had the 2 kids. And I went back and I worked for Late Show. And then I ended up doing this march that took me off of that career path. And then I went back. I worked for CBS again. I worked for Bob Schieffer. Then I quit again. I went to go work for the New York Daily News. I can't keep a job is basically what I'm telling you here. And then I was with a job Inside Edition. It's the highest rated syndicated magazine of all times. And it was like a guilty pleasure job. It was the kind of job where the craziest, wildest stories that come up in America, it was what Inside Edition did. And it was perfect hours, 8 to 4. I drop the kids off at school. I get off at 4 and go to their volleyball games or whatever. And in 2013, like June of 2013, I get a call from HR saying they're eliminating my job. Now, this is the first time CBS has said goodbye to me.
Yeah.
I mean, after 30 years, I was like one of the longest employees with the lowest amount of accrued vacation time or 401k because I kept leaving and coming back. And it was a little bit devastating because I loved that job so much. But within a week or two, I noticed Daisy was walking a little odd,
Mm.
like dragging her back legs. And I probably would not have noticed that had I been that full-time working mom that I had been.
And how old was
Um,
Daisy at this point?
she was 13.
Okay.
And I thought, well, it looked a bit odd. So I remember taking her to the vet, and he says, it takes some tests. He says, but I think it's degenerative myelopathy. DM, I think is what people shorthand, but it's like ALS for dogs.
Mhm.
And it was sort of a devastating diagnosis because the vet said, dogs don't really live to, maybe 6 months after the diagnosis. And so I thought, well, if anytime, I'm not going to look for another job right now. I'm going to focus on Daisy's last 6 months. But fortunately for that financial agreement that I had done, 13 years before, physical therapy, the water treadmill. No, it was really, and we got the little Eddie's wheelies, the little wheelies you see the dogs on. We got the stroller, we got the whole bit. And I have to say, I don't know if you've ever read the book Tuesdays with Maury.
Sure.
It's yes, Mitch Albom book, and it was very similar in that, I suddenly was this caregiver, and Daisy was getting the care, and she loved it. She was like, "This is just
Daisy
the
was
best."
Maury. Yeah.
Maury, she was totally
Yeah.
Maury. She was like, "This is the best," and I was a little worried because I thought she's such an athletic dog,
Right.
and she really did not want to go in the pool anymore. She did not want to go in the ocean, but she still wanted to chase the ball and do everything she can. So she really lived another summer, and I'm literally now wheeling her in a doggy, thing that you see the baby strollers. And people would stop me on the street and say, "Make that dog walk." And I'm an introvert, okay? So I don't really, and I'm a nice person, as Glamour Magazine said in that thing. So I don't really like confrontations, but I say, "No, my dog is not well. She can't walk."
Right.
And I'm giving her some fresh air. And then Daisy looks so cute. She's like a puppy still. Wheaten Terriers look like puppies until the very end. And so I became somebody else with this dog. I was really enjoying taking care of her. And on Fire Island, I put her into my bike basket.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, people would do like the Wizard of Oz, da, 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 like I had the dog in the basket. But Daisy loved it. She loved the attention she was getting from people, and she just loved it. And so she lived a full, year following the diagnosis. And then towards the summer of 2014, we knew it was, as the vet said, degenerative myelopathy really isn't painful because it starts in the hind legs, it moves its way up, but when it gets sort of to the lungs, it becomes painful. And that would be the time to say goodbye before. Mm-hmm. And so Daisy loved car rides. I mean, I kept a car in Manhattan and paid a ridiculous amount of money for a garage.
That you probably used a very short amount of time, yeah. Infrequently,
I would take my kids to school. I actually drove to work because I would take my kids to school and then go back, drop Daisy back, and then drive off to work. And I really only to justify having the car. And literally the car was just for Daisy. So, Daisy had a bucket list, and one of the bucket lists was a nice long car ride. And so I drove her to Ann Arbor, where my oldest daughter, Lily, was at the University of Michigan. And because Lily wanted to be with her. And, it was a very spiritual moment of saying goodbye to Daisy in Ann Arbor. And I left the car in Ann Arbor, to my daughter, say, "Here's the car keys. Now you have a car, you're, senior year of college." But it was a very spiritual moment saying goodbye to Daisy there. When we left the vet hospital, we stopped at a florist to get some daisies and, have a little, moment. My daughter and I were very sad. And this blind dog came out from behind the counter and sort of bowed down at us. And the owner of the florist said, "That is so odd. That is so odd. The dog never leaves behind, whatever." And that's when I realized there was a Daisy presence around us. There was a spiritual thing going on. And I had that experience with other dogs for at least 3 or 4 months, where other dogs would just stop and give me a moment and go on by. So yeah, that's my sad Daisy story.
No, it's really touching, and it just shows how Daisy really, whoever came up with that mock cover of the children's book, what is it? Daisy Saves.
I'll tell you, Kate Rogers came up with this, and I like to do shout out. She like Letterman. I learned how to do the shameless plug. Kate Rogers did the
He
Daisy
Saves
Saves
the
the Day. Yes, it's the book cover that doesn't have the book.
And in many ways, it feels like Daisy did save the day,
She
both
did.
in terms of when you had to sell the divorce on your children,
Yes.
and then throughout your life
Yes.
as 14 years. As you look forward with your this amazing career that you've had, what do you see in the future?
I've done a lot of different things, and I'm not sure if it's because I can't keep a job or I get bored easily or can't make commitments. But I've done a march, and
Just a million
I
mile
did, I
march.
did, I
Yeah.
did, I did, I did. I always like say, and before social media, I think I want to do another film. I hope there's somebody who will give me a grant out there. I just before the pandemic on the lockdowns, I had gone to the Louisiana Women's Policy Commission meeting. And it sounds boring, right? The Louisiana Women's Policy Commission. But I forgot this is Louisiana. Like a couple of weeks ago, they did a mass vaccination event and they had live bands. Okay. So
Of course.
nothing is dull in New Orleans. And so I was sort of intrigued by how they had this Louisiana Women's Policy Commission meeting to talk about all these issues, and they had a band. They had music playing, through intervals, and they had good food and setups. And so I think I want to do a film on how the creative people in Louisiana and maybe elsewhere, how they do their activism in a creative way. There's so many artists out there who do their activism and you don't even realize it. It sort of just sinks into the universe. And so I think I want to do that next.
Donna is a woman who has accomplished so many incredible things in her life and is no stranger to claiming these achievements with a furry friend by her side. Well, I hope you enjoyed our chat today, and if you are begging for more dog content, we've got a treat for you. There are many more Long Leash stories waiting for you anywhere podcasts are found. You can also sniff out the show at longleashshow.com. And hey, when you're there, how about letting us know what you think about the show by clicking on the little blue icon found on the bottom right of every page on the website. If you've already dug through the Long Leash, don't worry. There are plenty more dog-related shows at dogpodcastnetwork.com. We have new shows being added on a regular basis, so be sure to check out dogpodcastnetwork.com. I'd like to thank Donna Dees for joining us on the show today. Until next time, I'm James Jacobson. On behalf of all of us here at Dog Podcast Network, we wish you and your pup a very warm aloha.